Good morning, teacher and classmates. We are group number 6, and today we are going to present to you the topics inductive thematic analysis and discourse conversation analysis. So, enjoy your presentation. First, let's talk about inductive thematic analysis. Approaches to qualitative data collection and analysis are numerous, representing a diverse range of epistemological, theoretical, and disciplinary perspectives. Good data analysis combines appropriate elements and techniques from across traditions and epistemological perspectives. The theoretical or philosophical foundation provides a framework for inquiry, but it is the data collection and analysis processes and the outcome of those processes that are paramount. In other words, we need a way to argue what we know based on the process by which we came to know it. Algar, 1996. The process called Applied Thematic Analysis, or ATA, is a type of inductive analysis of qualitative data that can involve multiple analytic techniques. Qualitative data can be generated through other activities such as open-ended questions on a survey, free listening, and other semi-structured elicitation tasks, or visual data collection techniques. These methods are all useful and appropriate for certain types of research objectives. However, they are not commonly used methods in the broadly defined world of qualitative research. Okay, before talking about the process, let's define what qualitative research is. And according to Unkwin, Nyamongo, and Ryan 2001, qualitative research involves any research that uses data that do not indicate ordinal values. The focus in this definition is on the data generated in or used in qualitative inquiry, that is, text, images, and sounds. Essentially, the data in qualitative research are non-numeric and less structured data than those generated through quantitatively oriented inquiry, because the data collection process itself is less structured, more flexible, and inductive. Inductive analysis primarily have a descriptive and exploratory orientation. Now let's talk about thematic analysis. Thematic analysis require more involvement and interpretation from the researcher. Thematic analysis moves beyond counting explicit words or phrases and focus on identifying and describing both implicit and explicit ideas within the data, that is, themes. Reliability is of greater concern with thematic analysis than with word-based analysis because more interpretation goes into defining the data items. Applied research. Most definitions of applied research refer to the common end purpose of solving practical problems. This is typically distinguished from pure research oriented toward furthering existing knowledge for the sake of curiosity and knowledge itself. It is believed that theory or models or any other assertions about the way things are should be supported by data that have been collected and analyzed in a systematic and transparent manner. Let's talk about grounded theory. Grounded theory is a set of inductive and iterative techniques designed to identify categories and concepts within texts that are then linked into formal theoretical models. Corbin and Strauss 2008, Glasser and Strauss 1967. In applied research, the output may or may not be a theoretical model, but as with a grounded theory approach, it is important to ensure that the interpretations are supported by actual data in hand. Its primary goal is to describe and understand how people feel, think, and behave within a particular context relative to a specific research question. In this way, applied thematic analysis is similar to phenomenology, which seeks to understand the meanings that people give to their life experience and social reality. Schatz, 1962. Phenomenology. In phenomenological research, it is the participants' perceptions, feelings, and lived experiences that are paramount and that are the object of study. One of the greatest strengths of qualitative research is this ability to ask questions that are meaningful to participants and to likewise receive responses in participants' own words and native cognitive constructs. Let's talk about interpretivism and positivism. Interpretivism, stemming from a hermeneutic tradition, is most interested in interpreting deeper meaning in discourse and understanding multiple realities that are represented in a collection of personal narratives or observed behaviors and activities. To an interpretivist, the story one tells and its effects on the intended audience, it is the centerpiece of the method. A positivist approach is based on the fundamental ideas that A. Interpretations should be derived directly from data observed, and B. Data collection and analysis methods should, in some way, be systematic and transparent. So where does applied thematic analysis fall relative to all the approaches and procedures described? Applied thematic analysis comprises a bit of everything: grounded theory, positivism, interpretivism, and phenomenology synthesized into one methodological framework. The approach borrows the more useful techniques from each theoretical and methodological camp and adapts them to an applied research context. In such a context, it is assumed to ensure the credibility of findings to an external audience is paramount, and to achieve this goal is facilitated by systematicity and visibility of methods and procedures. To sum up, the ATA approach is a rigorous yet inductive set of procedures designed to identify and examine themes from textual data in a way that is transparent and credible.
Now, we're going to continue with origins and orientations. Conversation analysis. The style of work which has come to be known as conversation analysis is associated with the pioneer research of Harvey Sachs when investigating some phone calls. Sachs became interested in the following opening section from one of the calls, in which the caller B seemed to be having trouble with the agent's name. "This is Mr. Smith. May I help you?" "I can hear you." "This is Mr. Smith." "Smith." You will notice that in a second turn, the word Smith is underlined. This indicates that the speaker has emphasized or stressed this word. In conversation analysis, transcripts try to capture not only what was said, but also the way it was said. Consequently, a series of symbols such as underlining have been used for that purpose. Sachs argues that the caller is using the utterance "I can hear you" to fill the slot in the conversation where it would be expected that he returns his name. It is important to focus on the idea that there are the slots in interaction where specific kinds of actions are appropriate or expected. This is because it allows us to grasp the idea that verbal interaction has a structure, an architecture, which can be formally described by reference to the relationship between the actions or utterances performed. When we talk, we produce utterances which perform actions, which in return invite particular next kinds of action. In this sense, verbal interaction exhibits a structure, the shape and form of the ways in which contributions to interaction form a connected series of actions. And one of the tasks of conversation analysis is to discover and describe the architecture of this structure, the properties of the ways in which interaction proceeds through activities produced through successive turns. In this model, language is simply a mechanism which transports cognitive stuff between individual brains, and which is therefore a relatively unimportant feature of this process. At the University of Oxford, the British philosopher J.L. Austin was developing his theory of speech acts. He began by distinguishing between two types of utterances: constative utterances, which report some aspects of the word, and performative utterances, which perform specific action. An example of a performative is, "I suggest you open the window," where saying these words is to perform the action of suggesting. Other examples are promises, warnings, declarations, and so on. He terms such utterances speech acts. This does mean that, say, a transcription may seem daunting to the untrained eye, but they are extraordinarily valuable sources in the analysis of audio data, because they capture details which might be interactionally significant, but which would be omitted from more traditional transcriptions which merely focus on the spoken word. Then we have discourse analysis, which emerged in the sociology of scientific knowledge. It established a departure from realistic accounts of scientists' actions to a study of scientists' accounting practices. It also proposes that language is used variably. Accounts are constructed from a range of descriptive possibilities and are tied to the context in which they are produced and the function they perform. Gilbert and Mulcahy realized that the variability in interview accounts and other kinds of textual or discursive materials was not unique to their data, but was a feature of any sociological research which relied upon the use of accounts of action as an investigative resource. Our world is marked by dispute and disagreement, in courts, in television interviews, in political debates, and in everyday social life. Drawing from Holliday's work on the relationship between language and social context, they argue that it's necessary to acknowledge that any particular account or version of the world will be related to the circumstances of its production. Gilbert and Mulcahy argued that conventional sociological research rests on a native view of language in which it is assumed that any social event has one true meaning. Also, they suggest that social activities are the repositories of multiple meanings, by which they mean that the same circumstances can be described in a variety of ways to emphasize different features. Then we have language use as topic, interdisciplinary implications. CA and DA suggest that the way we use language can be studied in its own right, but for different reasons. For this, we have linguistics, a key strand of linguistic research developed from the writings of Noam Chomsky. He argued that there are two features to language. First, there is linguistic competence, a term he used to refer to the innate rules which inform the production of grammatically correct sentences. Second, there is linguistic performance, the actual use of our linguistic competencies. He argued that the goal of linguistics should be to study underlying linguistic competencies. And the best way to do this was to rely on our own expert knowledge and intuition about language. Then we have sociology, which is an empirical discipline concerned with the social organization of individual and collective human action. One of the defining features of human is that we possess sophisticated means of communication, of which the most important is the ability to talk. Our communicative competencies facilitate the complex interrelationship with sociologists seek to understand, whether these occur in the context of the family, at work, in education, or whether they concern class, gender, or ethnic relations, and so on. Given the importance of communication, then, it might be expected that the study of language is at the heart of the sociological enterprise. And finally, we have psychology. The dominant perspective in psychology mirrors the Chomskyan approach, in that it stressed the importance of cognition, particularly the study of physical structure in the brain, which are associated with specific speech activities.
Hi everyone, to continue with this video, this is my time to talk, and I will talk about a little bit of the two key studies. And in this part, we will consider two key studies to illustrate conversation analysis, C8, and discourse analysis, D8. Each study addresses many of the issues which have consequently developed into core concerns for C8 and D8, or which are closely associated with these approaches. For example, the ELSE study has been chosen because it illustrates key methodological features of conversation analysis, such as the analysis of mantle-verbal interaction as a systematic, highly organized phenomenon. To begin, we are going to talk about this conversation analysis and the organization of turn-taking. For this, turn-taking in ordinary conversation is a remarkable achievement. At the start of any period or interaction, neither party knows in advance how many turns they will take, what the topics will be, or the order in which they will be addressed, how long each turn may be, whether or not someone else will join, and if they do, how turns are be allocated among the prospective party, and so on. So for this conversation, we're going to see like this example. But now these are the turn construction knowledge. And how is this managed? How do the next speaker know when it is appropriate to start their turn? Well, a key factor in this achievement is our tacit taking for granted knowledge about turn construction. And also, a second property of turn construction unit is that once they are underway, we can participate when they will end, as you can see in this chart. Also, we're going to follow a procedure for the types of conversation, and we got a set of rules over here. And rule number 1A says that if the current speaker has identified or selected a particular new speaker, then that speaker should take a turn in that place. That is quite easy, right? Rule AB If no such selection has been made, then any next speaker may, but need not, self-selected at that point. If self-selection occurred, then first speaker has the right to the turn. Then we have rule AC. If no next speaker has been selected, then the current speaker may, but need not, continue talking with another turn construction unit, unless another speaker has self-selected, in which case that speaker gains the right to the turn. And finally, we have rule 2. Whichever option has operated rules 1 from A to C come into play again for the next transition relevant place. But now, to understand a little bit better this, we have the other approaches to the study of oral communication. And the approaches that we have is speech act theory. And that is basically the study of activity performed by utterance and the investigation of the precondition necessary for an utterance to be interpreted as a particular kind of fact. Also, we can see interactional sociolinguistics. This is basically the analysis of the way in which common grammatical knowledge may be mobilized by different social or groups, leading to understanding or the way in which particular linguistic features are produced for particular settings and contexts. Also, we can find conversation analysis, and this is basically the analysis of sequential organization of interaction. Simple as that. And finally, we can find variation analysis, and that is the formal investigation of way in which language use varies and changes between groups across the time.
What is conversation analysis? Conversation analysis is an approach of the social interaction that was created by Harvey Sachs. Also wrote in the physiological study of everyday life have the third significant influence, of course, in the humanities and social science as linguistics. As the roots of conversation analysis, we have so many ideas. For example, Harold Garfinkel, the idea on social norms as guiding our actions, but also as resources for them, and interest in common sense knowledge and methods. Erving Goffman's the idea of social interaction as an autonomous entity worthy of investigation, and Harvey Sachs that suggests a method for systematic exploration of social interaction. For example, how you do teaching, how you do medical expertise, and how you do empathy and concert with other participants of situations, looking for why this now and presuming order all points. For example, at first I thought and then I realized. So, they believe that the study of language use was to set a set of techniques or methods, and the participants constructing and interpreting the actual talk. So, conversation analysis and discourse analysis are the same. Well, the thing is that they are not the same, but in both we analyze the spoken interaction that is talk, but there are some differences between them. For example, we have in discourse analysis tend to adapt a methodology of deductive. For example, they are the general from the specific, focusing on rules for producing well-formed units of language larger than a sentence. And conversation analysis applies an inductive methodology from the particular to the general. And being interest in the sequential organization of talking interaction. So, discourse analysis can be used in relation to the written form. And on the other hand, we have conversation analysis that it can be only applied to the spoken form of the study of the language. So, conversation analysis is used for analyzing interaction process. So, when to use conversation analysis? Well, when recovering patterns of talk interaction, for example, how something is done, how something is realized together with other participants, doing teaching, doing status, doing expertise, when participants' orientations to relevant aspects of interaction, for example, what is characteristic to particular institutional activity, and when consequence of one type of action to what happens next within the interaction, and when conversation analysis is not the best choice, well, when a research on people's experiences and opinions, when analyzing written documents and making sense of larger entities of social action on multiple levels of organization. How is talk organized? Well, conversation analysis rightful answers is always the data. It starts with an investigation of the data and the transcription. The data is the talk that was produced in the original interaction. The transcript is merely just a representation of the data gathered. So, what is a transcription? A transcription is a symbolic representation of the speech that is reflected in the written form. We have also the sign language and the methodologies. So in the methodologies, we have the sociolinguistics, dialectology, conversation analysis, and phonetics. And the transcription conventions, we have to emphasize the identity of a speaker, because there are simultaneous pronunciation or speakers right at the same time. And we have characteristics of the speech, transcription symbols, and the meta-transcription, which involves repetition, that is to understand the meaning, the non-verbal to compare between gestures and words, and the pause that is in a conversation.
Now, let's talk about ideologies and practice. This is about discourse analysis. This area of discourse seeks to examine the broader ideological underpinning of language and bodies, sediments of social practice which serve to justify and perpetuate inequalities of power and opportunities in society. A study by Weatherall, 1987, provides an illustration in which they found that the correspondence discourse about women, workplace, career, and children clustered around two issues. First, there was the issue of equal opportunities. In this was right for women to be able to work, equal opportunities should be essential. However, respondents also presented an alternative formulation in which constraints upon women's equal opportunities. So this means that there were different ideas about this kind of equal opportunities. Now, let's move to exploring the method of conversation analysis, talk in work-related or institutional settings. Here we will explore in more detail the approach and methodology of conversation analysis by looking at studies of interaction in formal institutional settings, mostly related to the televised new interviews. This kind of data will be used to illustrate the importance of paying close attention to those occasions in which participants seem to deviate from established pattern or sequencing. A study conducted by Heritage and Gray Batch 1991 on the organization of new interviews, which happened in this political interview, Interview with leading political or public figure are routine feature where politicians and candidates are expected to submit themselves during election campaigns. So they, in this interview, they have an established pattern that they have to follow in order to share their ideas. We have interaction in formal institutional settings. In formal settings, participation is focused on particular tasks, that the order of participation is fairly rigid, thus that kind of term of participant is limited. This new interview had two kinds of participants, the interviewer and the interviewee. There is a clear order of interaction. They alternate turns of talking. Thus, they follow the following pattern, that is, the interviewer talks, then the interviewer, and then the interviewer, and so on. Therefore, each participant has to develop a different activity. It means that the interviewer tends to ask questions and the interviewer tends to answer them. Thus, we can observe that this is very different from ordinary conversation because they follow a pattern. Now, we have normative assumptions in new interview interaction. Here we have, it is not common to find that interviewing question will have two components, and which are two. One, it is a preface such as statement of fact, and the second is a question related to the statement of the fact. Here, the pattern they are going to follow. Then we have context and interaction. A common assumption will be that prior analysis it is necessary or at least useful to have some understanding of the participant, their history, their relation to each other, their personality, the topic, their talk, or the contents in which they are speaking. Here, interview participants need to have a context in order to ask questions and also for the others to answer. So it is very important to have context and interaction in order that they have a successful interview. And as a conclusion, we will say that discourse analysis proposes the language we use and the way we use it. It is not determined by no entry in some set objective properties of the event to which we refer. Then we have implications. Institution analysis can thus offer a great deal to our understanding of institutions and the relevance in our life. For our video, and thank you for watching. I hope you learned a lot.